that I'm probably not going to move back to Canada. He was denied. Hi, my name is Kyla Chantel. Welcome. So today I'm going to be doing a second part to my immigration journey moving from Canada to the US. So in the last video, I talked about going through the TN visa process, and that's how I was initially able to come to the US. In today's video, I'm going to be focusing now on the H1B/H4 visa process. So I was in the US for about 7 years on the TN before I finally realized that I'm probably not going to move back to Canada, and I see myself now living in the US long term. So when I came to this realization, I decided that I needed to get sponsorship in order to get the process for a permanent residency or a green card. So my current employer that I was at was not willing to do the sponsorship for me. So at that point, I started looking into other job options for a company that would be willing to sponsor me. So I was already aware of some companies that did sponsorships for people to get a green card. So there's a website where you can look up different companies to see how many sponsorships they have done within a certain time frame, and you can even see within your career category how many they've done. So that's helpful to see, like, okay, is this company familiar with doing the process? If yes, they'll probably be more willing to sponsor you. So I applied to numerous positions. I was finally able to get an interview, and I also had to fill out an application. And on the application, it asked, are you able to legally work in the US, which at the time I would have been with the TN. And then it also asked, in the future, would you be needing sponsorship for permanent residency? And I said yes. Now it's important that you be honest, and I wanted to be honest because that is what I needed and wanted. So when the time came for me to request for this, I could be able to say, I made this known on the application. I was offered a job after the interview, and I think what was really helpful for me is being able to go into that job with the TN visa process. Because it's so quick and easy, it's inexpensive, and I can literally get it done in a day. That was very helpful in being able to secure the job. I know of others from other countries who don't have that option and who have to go straight into the H1B, and it tends to take a bit longer for them. So if you are able to do the TN status first, I would recommend that as a way to get into the position, and then you can request sponsorship after that. So once I started the job, I waited a few months before I made my official request to be sponsored. They recommended with the sponsorship that I needed to get an H1B visa first before going straight into the sponsorship. The reason for this is because the TN status is temporary, so it does not have dual intent. Dual intent means you are wanting to potentially apply for permanent residency, not just temporary work status. So the TN visa does not have dual intent, but the H1B does. So the recommendation was for me to switch my status from the TN visa to the H1B. So because my job was sponsoring me, they provided me with immigration lawyers that processed all the paperwork for me. I just had to provide them all my documentation, and they did the process. Once I submitted the application, it was actually a fairly quick turnaround. I got approved for the H1B within about 3 months of submitting my application, which to me was really fast. I'm not sure what the typical timeline is, but I was expecting it to take a lot longer. But it was very simple in terms of what I had to do, but they asked for a lot of things, like, of course, pictures of your passport, diploma, transcripts. I think I also had to provide like my birth certificate. I don't remember if I had to do pay stubs at this step, but I did need to do like my job description, those types of things, just to show what my job is, my duties, and that it would fulfill the requirements of the H-1B visa. So during the time after I got my H-1B visa, probably a year later, I ended up getting engaged. And so my now husband, at the time, he was living in Trinidad and Tobago. And so we had to consider what path we wanted to take in order for him to be able to move here to the US to be with me. We considered two options. One was either for the H4 visa, or if he came over on a student visa. We were considering the student visa because that would allow him to move to the US before we got married. That way he would be able to start classes and get settled, and then it would be a smooth transition into our married life. Ultimately, that's what we decided to do. We decided to go for the student visa. However, due to some unfortunate circumstances, we didn't end up going through with the process before we got married, and we ended up doing it after we got married instead. At that point, we probably should have reconsidered which visa we wanted to go for, because now that we were married, it would have made more sense that we went for the H4 visa, which is a dependent of the H1B. With the H4 visa, you're able to go to school, but you can't work right away. There is a point in time in the process where you are able to work, but he would not have been able to immediately. But we were not very wise in our decisions, so he did go for the student visa, and he was denied because with the student visa, they thought that he wasn't just coming to be a student with the intention of returning to his home country, which is what you have to prove when going on a student visa. Because they knew he was married and his wife was already living in the US, they felt like his intention was to come for school but then to stay, which was true. So they denied him. So once we got the denial, we said, okay, we need to try to go for the H4 visa instead. So for the H4 visa, this process is also very straightforward and simple. You can do it yourself. You really don't need a lawyer to help you do it. All you have to do is go online, and I'll share the site. You select the visa that you're applying for, and they allow you to pick your appointment in the embassy depending on your country, and it will tell you the time frames of when you can get an appointment. I believe there's some documents you have to provide, such as your picture and a few other things. I can put it up on the screen, but it was very straightforward and the fee was reasonable. So he went to the interview. What he had to prove was about our relationship. So he had to bring pictures of our wedding, pictures of us dating, to show that we had a legitimate relationship that was based on our love for each other and not just transactional. So he had all that to bring for the interview, and it was smooth. He got approved, and we were very happy about that. Looking back, honestly, the H4 visa was the best option that we could have done, because eventually I requested from my job if they can begin the process now for me to get the green card. And because at this point we were already married, he already had his H4 visa. When they began the process for me for the green card, we were able to do it together. That's something we didn't have to worry about, how were we gonna get him to get permanent residency as well. So that was our process to get the H1B and the H4. It's really simple. If you're getting the H1B on your own, your employer should be taking care of that process for you. So you really don't have to worry about filling out all these forms and everything. Your lawyer should be doing that for you, or your job. For the H4 dependent visa, we did that on our own, and it was very simple, straightforward, and inexpensive. It's important to keep in mind that the H1B visa is only for 3 years. So after the first 3 years, you are able to renew it again for another 3 years. And then after 6 years, that's all the time you have. The reasoning behind it is that once you get the H1B, the thought is you will then apply for your green card. The expectation is you'll start the process, and so you can have your H1B valid while you're doing that process and then be able to adjust your status. I have started that process with my husband to get the green card, and I can share that in another video. Let me know down below in the comments what questions you may have that I didn't talk about or answer about the H1B or H4 process. So another great thing that happened is because I was already living here for, I believe, a year or two before my husband came, when he had the H4 visa to go to school, they considered him a resident of the state. And so the school that he attended, he was able to pay the state tuition fee. And if you don't know, the difference between the state tuition, like a resident of the state, and the non-resident tuition is very, very big. Like, it's so much more expensive if you have to pay as a non-resident of the state. So thankfully, they considered him a resident because he was my dependent and I had already been living here for about 2 years at the time. So we got to pay the state tuition fees, which helped us out a great deal. He didn't have any issues with applying to school and getting into school. He actually applied to multiple schools and was able to get in. Honestly, it's the best option if you're bringing a spouse over because they can't work. Going to school to better yourself and get an education if you didn't have one already, or even just to add on to what you already have, is always beneficial, especially when coming from another country. It just helps to get familiar with the US system and in the career that you want to go into. Eventually, when you have a dependent on the H4 visa, when you begin the process for the green card, there is a point in time where your spouse will then be able to get a work permit. I can talk more about that in another video, but we did reach that point where my husband was able to get a work permit and he decided to still finish school, and then he's able to start working as well. So the H4 visa really is a great option and it's pretty easy and straightforward. So I would recommend that to you if you're trying to come to the US on an H1B with a spouse. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. I will be doing more videos about our immigration process that we're still currently going through and just sharing the different challenges that we had and how we got through them, and also sharing our lives and the fun things that we do as well. Please comment down below anything else you'd like to hear or see from me, and if you have any questions, I'll be answering them as well. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.